Back on my Grizzlie again. Back on my Grizzlie again. Back on my Grizzlie again. Back on my Grizzlie again.
Yo, what's going on, sports fans? We are back with another episode of Dishhhtribute with me, the one and only Damon Geis. Fresh off a trip in New Orleans this weekend, I am up and at 'em to make sure we give you guys the best sports content possible. In the NBA, we will talk NBA draft fallout along with my favorite 5 picks, who has the best young core heading into free agency, and the Jazz trading for longtime Grizzlie guard Mike Conley. In the NFL, I share my opinion on why the Saints should have no problem giving Michael Thomas the richest wide receiver contract in the league. And in wrestling, I break down WWE Stomping Grounds pay-per-view and if I think things are finally now swinging back in the right direction. Starting off in the NBA, we have the draft. Besides the top 3 picks, which were pretty much a lot going in, to me there were plenty of players who landed in great spots that allowed them to be contributors at some point in time for their respective franchises. Now before I touch on my top 5 picks of the draft, I want to give a shout out to South Fulton's own Chuma Okeke. Shout out Westlake and the entire Lions Den, of course. Now with Chuma, I believe he was big time hooping before his unfortunate ACL injury in this year's past Final Four, which I just want to say I believe Auburn wins it all if he doesn't go down. But this is a guy who I watched break the all-time record for points at Westlake and win a state championship. You know, this kid is built of the right stuff, and I expect him to bounce back and contribute right away for the Orlando Magic. Again, congrats, Chuma. Now for my top 5 picks of the draft, number 1, I have Duke's Cam Reddish to the Hawks at number 10. I think Reddish ultimately will end up as the steal of the draft, and for him, you couldn't have put him in a better situation. He now goes to ATL with Trae Young leading the show, along with the 4th pick, DeAndre Hunter, where the Hawks for years to come could have one of the scariest small ball lineups in the entire league. At number 2, I have USC's Kevin Porter Jr. to the Cavs at number 30. Now, the lefty from Seattle, any hooper from Seattle gets my support, and it's clear Porter has the Cavs support as they sent the Bucks $5 million in cash considerations to land him, which is the most ever given up by a team in NBA history for a player. Number 3, I have Oregon's Bol Bol to the Nuggets at 44. For Bol Bol, it was a long wait, but he was selected by the Miami Heat and then traded to the Nuggets. Now, for me, I said heading into the draft, regardless of where he ended up, that any franchise that took Bol Bol should definitely redshirt him for his first season. Let him build his body, get used to how the association works with all the travel and the eating schedule and everything along those lines. Then next year, throw him in wherever they see fit. Now with the Nuggets landing Bol, I don't think they could have asked for a better situation. They just did the same with Michael Porter Jr. Of course, he was injured, but nonetheless, there's depth within this team where he isn't needed right away. He also has quite possibly the most skilled big in the league within Jokic, who can help him develop his game at a quicker pace in some much-needed areas. At number 4, I have UNC's Kobe White to the Bulls at number 7. One of my favorite players to watch within the tourney last year. I think White is a great fit in Chicago. I do like Chris Dunn, but I believe Dunn is more of a defensive player. He's a lockdown defender. Kobe White gives the Bulls a much-needed playmaker within the lineup, with guys all over the starting lineup who can put the ball in the basket at a consistent rate. You have Zach LaVine, who is giving you scoring high across the association on any team. Lauri Markkanen, aka Lauri Marksman, who has already been compared to Dirk and Kristaps, along with Wendell Carter. Now, maybe Chicago only improves a bit record-wise, but I think you'll definitely start to see a change of pace within White, bringing a new dynamic to the team. At number 5, lastly, I have Michigan's Jordan Poole to the Warriors at 28. Now, Golden State with the injury to Klay and KD, regardless of their pending free agent decisions, which I believe KD will end up elsewhere and Klay will stay, the Dubs needed some much-needed shooting outside of Steph. Now, Poole gives them that, along with the ability to attack the rim with confidence. Now, while they wait for Klay to recover from his ACL injury, I expect Poole to contribute right away with his shooting. He may even start. Switching topics in the NBA, we look to our Twitter account at Dishhhtribute. Be sure to follow on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram, even Facebook. where I ran a poll asking our followers, following the NBA draft and heading into free agency, who has the best young core between the Kings, Hawks, and Pelicans. With a total of 23 votes, the Kings came in last with 0%, the Hawks came in second at 43%, and the Pelicans came in first at 57%. Now, I agree with our followers, as I believe the Kings show flashes and the Hawks built it very nicely through the draft, but the Pelicans are the most complete team all around. In addition to having possibly the most underrated player in the entire association leading the squad within Jrue Holiday, they have the biggest prospects since LeBron and Zion. They have Zoe controlling the pace with his next level passing gift, and B.I. with the opportunity to be the number one scoring option. In addition to that, they have some very nice complementary pieces with Josh Hart, Jahlil Okafor, and the 8th overall pick in Texas's Jackson Hayes. Now, while at this moment it remains to be seen where the top names in free agency end up, if New Orleans can land some solid role players and retain some of their solid role players like E'Twaun Moore and Elfrid Payton, I could definitely see them building a solid second unit and, securing a lower seed in the Western Conference playoff race. Lastly, in the association, the Jazz were able to trade for longtime Grizzly guard Mike Conley. Now, with the Grizz expected, as they did, to take Ja Morant with the number 2 pick, it was obvious they needed to get rid of another guard in Mike Conley with his huge contract. Now, the Jazz, in my opinion, is a perfect landing spot for Conley, as he can be an immediate contributor with his stifling defense and professionalism, which the Jazz actually pride themselves on. Now, in addition to Conley, adding to what the Jazz pride themselves on, he also gives Utah that spark offensively to go along with the dynamic Donovan Mitchell. Now, all respect is due when talking about what Ricky Rubio has done for that franchise over the past couple of years, and I believe he'll find a suitable role for his talents elsewhere in the association. But the Jazz now have one of the top backcourts in the league, who are going to give them nothing less than their all night in and night out. Now, I see the Jazz possibly finishing as high as the top 4 seed in the West, nowhere lower than the 6th. Switching leagues, in the NFL, it was reported earlier last week heading into training camp that the Saints were looking to extend wideout Mike Thomas with aspirations of making 13 the highest paid receiver in the sport. Now, I have no problem with this move by the Saints, as I believe Mike Thomas is definitely a top 5 receiver in the game, and he's definitely one of the top players for the franchise. He embraces the city. You see him second lining on the sideline, which for me, being a fan of the Saints for so long and being from the city of New Orleans, you love to see it. Of course, there have been talented players to play for the black and gold, but not many, with a passion to carry the city on their back like Mike Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Marshawn Lattimore, and more. Now, those guys will definitely get paid, but of course, Mike Thomas now being the topic of conversation to get extended first, he definitely deserves to be so, as this guy, who now has the all-time record for the most catches in the first 3 seasons, along with coming off his biggest season so far, leading the entire NFL in catches and propelling the Saints to the number 1 seed and a spot in the NFC Championship. Now, with this possibly being Drew Brees' last hurrah, I expect them to rely on Thomas even more. I expect them to have a better campaign than last year, and I definitely think the addition of Jared Cook will help with that. Now, Cook's speed will force defenses to respect his speed down the seams, opening up for plays for Thomas underneath. As I will always say, not only in football but all sports, if you have a top player that you rely on for your franchise, there's always that possibility of them getting injured, and I believe you should try to get them paid as soon as possible. So I just want to give a thumbs up to the Saints on taking care of their players. Lastly, our last topic of today's episode, WWE Stomping Grounds pay-per-view. Now, while this event started off hot, I think it sort of sizzled out towards the end, leading me to give the show a grand total of 6 out of 10. The Cruiserweight Championship match got things started, and as pointed out by PACT Life Pod's owner, Bruiser, 205 Live needs their own takeover event or something along those lines, because those cats make magic at every turn. KO and Zayn beat the New Day. Reigns defeated Drew McIntyre. All the champions retained their titles except one, Samoa Joe, as Ricochet beat him for the U.S. title. Now, I think this could be a potential change of pace within WWE, Of course, it's much needed with the low ticket sales and lower viewership, but I think Ricochet is the man that they needed to turn to. Now, it's been announced that on tonight's episode of Raw, he'll be taking on returning AJ Styles, and I think that feud has the potential to get, guys tied back in to the company, especially if the storytelling is done correctly. Now, we know these guys will make jaws drop within the ring, but I think WWE needs to bring a heel Styles in order for this feud to live up to its full potential. Well, folks, as worn by Anthony Davis on his last game as a Pelican, that's all, folks. Be sure to follow Dishhhtribute on all social media at Dishhhtribute, as I will be posting content all week to help hype up the NBA free agency with highlights, polls, and much more. Be sure to follow my personal accounts on all social media as well at Damon Geis. Check out the latest episode of the PACT Life Pod with the Bros, as well as check out my brother Cut's latest single, Bands on Me, on all streaming platforms. Follow all PACT brand at PACT brand to stay up to date with everything PACT, and be sure to go cop you some PACT merch. I'm your host, Damon Geis, signing off.